He'd already lost a brother to the conflict. And he'd also experienced through his own life and the life of his peers and parents 40 years, again, of conflict. And they got together and they decided they needed to ask a question. They asked a question of the world. The question they asked is, why not love? Why not love? And they started a campaign. These are young teenage kids from Bamyan. Remember, Bamyan is where the Buddha statues were that were destroyed as we were entering Afghanistan. And they started Our Journey to Smile. And they developed a capacity with a technology that was still fairly young 4 years ago, the flip video camera. And they produced a YouTube video, which they had delivered through Carl Eikenberry, the ambassador in Afghanistan, at the dedication of a peace park in Bamyan. And the video said to the president prior to his inauguration, as children in Afghanistan, we want you to hear that our experience of the war is overwhelming, and we think it should end. And we hope that as you become president, you'll take into consideration the impact of the war on children. After the president was inaugurated, they produced a second video piece, and it was addressed to Malika and Sasha, the president's daughters. And there was 2 young girls from the village. And they said, we hope, Malika and Sasha, that you'll ask your parents around the supper table if they've given any thought as to what the costs of war might be to the children in Afghanistan. Little tiny village, remote Afghanistan, has now produced 135 videotapes documenting their experience with the war, engaging themselves in other nonviolent, non-governmental associations in Afghanistan as they deal with the kinds of trauma that Bob was describing that American soldiers suffer, that they suffer as civilians. And we've watched them grow for 4 years now. 3 times in the last 3 months, they've had 24-hour telethons with global participation around the world. They've begun conversations with Gazan youth, and Sri Lankan youth, and Congo youth, and Latin American youth, and American youth. They've started a conversation amongst children and teenagers that we know is reaching into the highest offices in Afghanistan and around the world, asking the questions about why do we use violence? Why do we choose violence to make the changes that we choose to make? I think it's a hopeful and a positive story. I think it's evidence that commitments to nonviolence continue to find ways to infect populations and bring the world to a senior conversation. It may be utopian, it may be visionary, but in fact, that was the way in which we came to know the possibilities of nonviolence through the work of Gandhi in India, through the work of Martin Luther King in this country. Monumental social changes, national and international, as a result of an ongoing and open conversation about nonviolence. And here we are being led by children. Let me just close by saying that those children and their parents and the organizations that they're a part of all answered the question that is asked, what happens if we leave? With this, leave. They do not want us there. Yes, there will be costs, but violence begets more violence. Nonviolence will lead to nonviolent outcomes. The message that we're getting loud and clear from Afghanis who've been dealing with this war and wars before it for 40 years is take your armies, take your arms, and go home. Don't worry about what might happen. That's our responsibility. That's our problem. And that's the work of reconciliation, is to listen to what the people who are suffering from the violence say that they need. And then maybe Carol will tell us a little bit about the other question is, it's the old question of follow the money. Who profits from our being where we are? The other question that we have to answer for ourselves. But thanks for letting me tell that story. I'd be happy to answer a couple of questions.